We are making our first video, and we're going to be talking about our testimonies. And I'm going to go first. This is going to be edited. About a year ago, I started going back to church. I have OCD, and I was sitting there trying to do everything right as a Christian, and I was driving myself crazy. And you can't do everything right. It's impossible for you to not sin. You can't be Jesus. I started living out of the tree of good and evil, which actually represents Satan. The way this is supposed to work is when you're seeking after God, you're not supposed to try to do everything right and not to do everything wrong. Seek after Him. You should try your best not to sin, but when you do sin, don't feel shameful, guilty, and don't condemn yourself, because that's Satan getting in there and saying, oh, you screwed up, so you're just a screw up, you're going to continue sinning, and you'll end up in a sin cycle, which is what happens when people, they try not to sin, and then when they do sin, they condemn themselves. When you do that, you end up in a sin cycle. But if you try not to sin, and you do sin by accident, don't feel bad that you sinned, because you're still 100% with God. Because it's only a problem when you start condemning yourself, because that's the devil. He wants you to feel bad about yourself and feel that you're a screw up. And people have this view that you have to be the perfect Christian and to never sin to be, be a good Christian, which isn't the case at all. I could go out and I could murder 100 people, and God would still forgive me. I would feel really bad about it, but we could go out and start killing people. So let's go do it. No, okay, but anyway, so this is basically what I got. I got stuck into a sin cycle. Back in about a year ago, and I was driving myself nuts, and I basically burned myself out because I was sitting there trying to be perfect, and always condemning myself when I screwed up, and I basically gave up on God. In fact, I was at church one Sunday, and I was sitting back, and everybody was going forward to get prayed for. And I sat back and didn't go up front, which I guess is my own fault. But I sat there and I was kind of like, well, God, if you want me to worship you, send somebody out to bring me forward. And nobody came out to get me and bring me up forward to get prayed for. So I walked out of the church and I gave up on God for about a year. And then this past 4 months, well, I'll tell you this. I was at home, and I was, because I have OCD, the thoughts were getting so bad, like, it was just like, it was like a demonic attack, but I couldn't control my own thoughts. I literally thought I was losing my mind, and I couldn't control my thoughts anymore, and I just had overwhelming thoughts all the time, every day. There's no break. And sometimes I would get breaks when I would watch TV or something, or I'd do something to distract me. I even started to develop panic attacks, which I never had before. I occasionally have those a little bit. I decided I'm going back to church because there's something going on here. I can see the road I'm heading down right now.
It's okay to.
So I was like, I'm going to church. I'm going to test this thing out and see if God is real. And I knew in my heart that God was real, but I still have my doubts. And I have like a scientific mind, and I was like, I'm just going to go to church, I'm going to test this thing out, and if something happens, well, that's cool. Then, God exists, and He's actually listening. I went to church, and I went up front and got prayed for. At one point, they kind of gestured me to the floor when they were praying for me, and I kind of, clapped to the floor reluctantly because I hadn't done that before. I felt God God's presence, got God's presence touching me on the inside. I could feel God just just radiating through me. And then after the church service, I went out to my cousin's car with my cousin. We were both going home, so we walked out to the car, and we get in the car, and he turns on the radio, and it starts singing about how the healing begins, by 10th Avenue. Healing Begins is what it's called. I hope I'm not boring you. Anyways, so hopefully you find this video interesting. I'm going to skip forward. I went through an RTF seminar. Okay, anyways. We'll keep all the funny parts.
Maybe.
Okay, anyways.
Those creepy people staring at us.
Dad?
I'm trying to...
I'm on the center.
Okay.
Your shoes are on. Whatever.
Okay, it's recording. Pressure's on.